Welcome back. And now this, Russia and China signing a deal for a new gas pipeline after Vladimir Putin meets with Xi Jinping in Shanghai yesterday. This binding agreement sets up a massive pipeline to deliver gas from Russia to China through Mongolia over the next 30 years. It's all happening at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit. This summit in Beijing is featuring leaders from China, Russia, India, and North Korea. Iran leadership is expected tomorrow. India's Prime Minister Modi visiting China for the first time in 7 years, as President Trump's 50% tariff on India took effect last week. The president is calling the U.S.-India-U.S. trade relationship, quote, a totally one-sided disaster, adding that they have now offered to cut their tariffs to zero. But it's getting late. This should have been done years ago, says the president. Joining me now is Fox News senior strategic analyst and chairman for the Institute of the Study of War, General Jack Keane, back with me. General, good to see you. Thank you so much for being here. And I want to get your take on this summit underway in Beijing with all of America's adversaries.
Well, there's nothing unusual, certainly, about Russia and China being together at the Shanghai summit. Based on the fact they're both authoritarian regimes, they both want to control their sphere of influence in their region, Russia in Europe and China in the Indo-Pacific region. And both of them desire that the United States be deposed as the world's global leader so they can have more influence. What's different here is India. India does have a relationship with Russia geopolitically and militarily for years. But the fact that they're at the Shanghai summit in China, that is really the geopolitical difference here. As we both know, China and India are the two largest countries in terms of population, but they're vastly different. India is the world's largest democracy, and China is an authoritarian, repressive regime. And the historical differences, their military differences, their diplomatic differences are deep, and it's likely not to be overcome by this one meeting. I suspect that maybe the motivation for Modi to go to China at this particular time has much to do with the tariffs that the president has imposed on India and try to correct the imbalance and also try to have some impact on India buying Russia's oil. You have reported many times here that it is China and India that is propping up Russia's economy by purchasing their oil in vast quantities. And hopefully, if it doesn't look like there's going to be a material difference, coming out of the U.S.-Russia talks, that the United States does the same with China, imposes those significant sanctions on China purchasing that oil. But this is people are calling this a major reset between China and India. I don't think we should go that far. I think more needs to be seen here, Maria. We have multiple administrations, Democratic and Republican, and certainly the first Trump administration is included in that, has added value to the India-United States relationship. And that has been building through the years and increased military assistance as well. So that relationship has been moving in the right direction. It remains to be seen if this is really a systematic break. I doubt it is, because India's interests as a democratic society are much more aligned with the United States than what they are with China.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me, actually. So where are we on Russia? Because President Trump's deadline for Putin to set up a bilateral meeting with Ukraine's Zelensky came and went yesterday, right? The Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, said that everything's on the table when it comes to potential Russian sanctions and secondary sanctions, while Putin is defending more attacks on Ukraine, General. The Kremlin also accused of jamming the GPS navigation of a plane carrying EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen yesterday over Bulgaria. Now, the plane landed safely, but there was worry there for a moment that was as close as it gets to a potential assassination attempt.
Yeah, certainly that's an alarming incident, to be sure. But looking at what's come out of the Alaska summit, Putin again, put on the table promises of a bilateral meeting with Zelensky, a trilateral meeting with President Trump. Now his spokesperson, as of yesterday, denied that there was ever any agreement to do any of that. So promises made and promises not kept. is what we see continuously out of Putin. And, as you just noted, escalating the war. And escalating the war against what? Against the civilians in Ukraine. That has been the major military significant thing that has taken place since the talks began with President Trump, is the escalation of the war against civilians, the very thing that has always had President Trump's attention, and that is the unnecessary killing that war brings to the table. Yeah. So I think the president, has a decision to make here, and I think it's time to bring the hammer in terms of what you just talked about, sanctions to be sure, and tariffs, but also increased military assistance, give Ukraine what they need to shut down Russia's offensive operation that's going on, small tactical gains to be sure, but shut it down, give them the offensive weapons, and give them the authority to use them in deep attacks into Russia. All of that, the three of those things combined, will get Putin's attention. And we gotta understand, when we use the hammer, it's part of the peace process. It's attempting to change the adversary's behavior to come to the negotiating table, much as President Trump did with Zelensky when he wanted conditions before a ceasefire, and then finally came to the table with no conditions for that ceasefire. I think that's where we are, and that's what we should be doing with Russia going forward.
What do you think China is promising Russia here, General? I mean, clearly they are showing a united front. And I know you say that there's nothing abnormal about that, but is China giving Russia promises of a backstop or support should things turn ugly with the U.S. or deteriorate further?
Well, China has actually been Russia's #1 supporter. They don't give them a military platform like a tank or an artillery piece, but they give them everything to help make that platform. And then all the needs for an army to be on the battlefield, not just the material needs. There's so much logistics and other things that are needed for that army to be sustained on the battlefield. They're helping them do all of that. And the #1 assistance they're providing is revenue, because they're buying vast quantities of Russian oil.
Yeah, there you go.
And we've got to stop that. And when we dry up Russia's revenue source, he has huge problems then his defense industrial base, and he can't produce the materials he needs for that battlefield. It is that simple. And with the weapons that the Ukrainians need, that 1-2 punch will really make a difference dealing with Putin and where he is. Where he is right now is he still wants to control Ukraine, still wants to expand into Europe. He's not given up on those objectives. And that's the reality of what we're dealing with. He talks nice, but we all know what he's really doing. And he's not fulfilled any of the promises that he made.
No, he has not. General, it's great to get your insights as always. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, great talking to you, Maria. Thank you.
All right. General Jack Keane.